and welcome to my YouTube channel. In today's video, I'm going to be recommending books based on your favorite rom-com. I've been trying to watch more movies. I've never been like a super huge movie person. I feel like I would just rather read how a movie ends than sit through like 2 hours to find out how a movie ends. But I'm trying to get better. There's a ton of movies that I've been saying I want to watch for like years now. So in 2026, my goal has been to watch more movies, and I have finally started watching some of those movies, and I'm actually having a really good time. Like, I think I like movies now, which is kind of wild and crazy for me to say. It has made me start to look at some of my favorite books that have kind of that 2000s rom-com vibe and seeing, which movies kind of correlate or seem to go along with that story and have that similar like vibe. So let's go ahead and get this started. I think I have 10 books to recommend. So we'll go ahead and get this rolling. Hopefully this is like a quick, short, happy little video. I know the last one was a lot longer than I had planned, but I don't know what I expected for a 24-hour reading challenge. So our first book is kind of the book that started it all. I read it last year when it first came out and was kind of apprehensive about it. Everyone was talking about how amazing it was. Everyone was comparing it to a very, very popular rom-com. So I kind of thought that it might be overhyped, and then I read it and was super impressed, absolutely loved it. So the first book that we're going to talk about that is inspired by a rom-com is First Time Caller by B.K. Borison, which gives off Sleepless in Seattle vibes. So as someone who lives near Seattle, I thought that that movie was going to be like super stupid and inaccurate and cheesy. It's actually not super inaccurate. I mean, I don't go to all of the places they go to, but it still kind of encapsulated the vibe. It wasn't like, me and my mom call it eclipse raining whenever it rains really, really hard. Because if you watch the Twilight movies Eclipse, like, it's supposed to be set in Seattle for part of it, and it's like torrential downpouring the whole movie when they're in Seattle. And I've never seen it rain that hard, like almost ever. My entire time here in Washington, it doesn't rain hard here, it just drizzles. So we call it eclipse raining, and like, it doesn't do that in that movie that often. Like, it felt kind of more accurate. I also put off watching Sleepless in Seattle because I knew part of the premise is a kid of a single parent calls like a radio hotline to like get his dad a date or something. And I know for a fact my mom would have killed me if I did that. So it just already was feeling, no. But I finally watched it. I actually did really enjoy it. So I figured that I would go ahead and have this be our first book to kind of mention this theme, since this is a little bit the book that kind of inspired me to do the video. But overall, I believe I did end up giving this book a 5 stars. I absolutely loved it and would definitely recommend this if you like Sleepless in Seattle. So my next recommendation is a book that I finished a while ago, and as I was reading it, I was getting the vibe of this particular rom-com, so it wasn't like that far off for me to be like, oh yeah, for sure. Whereas the rom-com that it kind of reminds me of is really known for being like a family comedy. You're kind of introduced to this whole cast of characters, whereas in this book, we are really focusing on just our 2 main characters. So that's like the main difference, but it's still a very similar situation. So my second recommendation is The Wall of Winnipeg and Me by Mariana Zapata, if you liked The Proposal. So in The Proposal, the whole premise is that this lady is the boss of Ryan Reynolds' character. I think it's Sandra Bullock. Sandra Bullock is Ryan Reynolds' boss, and she kind of treats him like shit. Like, she's ruthless, she is mean, she is never satisfied. Like, she is just like always like on him. Like, she's super, super like anal about how the work needs to get done. And she's just like not a good boss about like anything really. And she is a Canadian citizen, I believe. And she needs to get married to keep her green card and stay working in the United States. So because Ryan Reynolds is like her assistant or something, she basically says, okay, we're gonna get married. And it kind of goes from there. Like I said, it follows a big cast of characters. They meet each other's families, all of this stuff. Whereas The Wall of Winnipeg and Me is a very similar premise. We are following this girl who is an assistant to a football player known as the Wall of Winnipeg. So he is not from America, but plays football in America. And his green card is going to expire, so he can't stay in the States to play football anymore. And he suggests that he pay her money to be his wife for a couple of years, because she's already his assistant. She's already helping him out. She's already spending so much time with him, and they can go their separate ways once his football career kind of ends and he gets his citizenship. Very similar premise, very similar like vibe, but focusing on like a different aspect. I think this one goes a lot more in detail of why these two characters are the way that they are, like how the Wall of Winnipeg and me ended up being such a guarded, standoffish person, whereas our assistant kind of takes on that, like, I have to take care of everyone role all the time. Like, no matter the situation, she has to like look out for people. And I think that The Proposal does a really good job of that as well, but it uses their family dynamics to explain that. Whereas this one, they don't really mention their families too much. Both of our main characters are pretty estranged from their families. And I think that that kind of helps to get us knowing these two main characters a lot faster than we kind of get to know them in The Proposal. So this one is definitely a good book to read if you like The Proposal. This next recommendation is a book that I actually haven't read, but knowing this author's work, I know that her writing just already gives rom-com vibes. The other two books of hers that I've read just don't have a movie equivalent quite as strong as this one does, because it features a trope literally named after the movie. So my recommendation is The Do-Over by Lynn Painter if you like Groundhog Day. So this is another movie that I had not watched up until recently, but I did know of the trope. Like, I feel like it's a pretty common trope. It's not something like super wild and crazy where it's like, oh, you rarely ever see it. Like, it's literally named after the movie. So in this one, we're following our main character, Emily, and she's a high school student who is experiencing Valentine's Day over and over and over. And it is probably the worst Valentine's Day of her life. She gets in a car accident, her boyfriend dumps her, all of these things go wrong. I'm pretty sure she like fails a test or something. But she experiences Groundhog's Day and starts reliving the same day over and over and over again. And so I feel like this one would be a really good one if you like Groundhog Day, because that's the premise of Groundhog Day, is our main character is reliving Groundhog Day over and over. So the main reason that I picked this one, like I said, is because Lynn Painter's writing just gives me rom-com vibes. So the two books of Lynn Painter's that I've read are Better Than the Movies and The Love Wager, and both of those gave me rom-com vibes, but neither of them have an actual real life rom-com counterpart that I could find, that I knew of. Like, I just haven't seen any movies or heard of any rom-coms that are a similar premise to The Love Wage, or maybe I'm just like living under a rock. But this one has such a direct comparison to Groundhog's Day that I figured we'll just put it on. I know that the writing is going to be the exact same as Better Than the Movies and The Love Wager, so I'm not too worried about the writing being like a different vibe. I know that Lynn Painter's writing is going to be that rom-com vibe. My next recommendation is actually a graphic novel, and I feel like this comparison gets made a lot, but I didn't realize how similar they were until I got more and more into the volumes. I mean, I'm only on volume 3, but Heartstopper by Alice Oseman is very similar to Love, Simon. So if you're a big fan of Love, Simon, or those kind of coming of age rom-coms where, you know, our main character kind of has to like come into their own, I think this could be a really good book for you. And like I said, it's a graphic novel. So we're actually getting pictures. It's a little bit different than a regular book where you kind of have to like read a ton. These fly super, super fast, but I absolutely adore them. We're following our two main characters, Charlie and Nick, as they kind of like grow their little friendship and have like a budding relationship come out of it as well. Okay, Pippa's just gonna hang out with us for the rest of the video, I guess. Okay, my next book recommendation is actually inspired by my favorite rom-com, probably of all time, and that is 13 Going on 30. So for that, I would recommend Woke Up Like This by Amy Leah. So in this one, we're following our female main character as she is transported to being an adult, very similar to how Jennifer Garner's character is using her little magic pixie dust in the movie to wake up as a 30-year-old. So in this one, we are following, like I said, our female main character, but the twist in this one is that our male main character also comes from their regular time and becomes a 30-year-old. So our female main character, Charlotte, is not alone in her endeavor in the new world. They're a little bit less impressed by technology and like other things that have changed, similar to Jenna's character in 13 Going on 30, how there were things that like she didn't know, and like she didn't know how to use the phone, and she didn't know how to like do all of these other things. She wasn't used to all these new technologies. It focuses a little bit less on those new technologies and goes a little bit deeper into kind of like what changes in their life have led them to being 30. Because when Charlotte and her like arch rival kind of wake up, they are engaged. So they have no idea how they even got together to get engaged in the first place. And they kind of have to like figure that out and figure out why they're no longer friends with people they were friends with, why they became friends with other people. So it had a lot more to do with like what is going on like in that time that they're missing. Whereas I feel like 13 Going on 30 was really about like trying to figure out how to get back. And also, I feel like 13 Going on 30 focuses a lot on Jenna's career as a magazine editor, whereas in this one, Charlotte and her arch nemesis have careers. They don't really like talk about them very much. Like they're not doing what they thought they would do, which is very different than I feel like what is going on with Jenna and 13 Going on 30, but it still gives those very similar vibes. The next book that I'm recommending is I think the most different from the movie that I think that it feels a lot like, mainly because I feel like the two main characters in the movie like have a lot of a different situation than the two main characters in this book. But the book that I'm recommending is The Unhoneymooners if you like Forgetting Sarah Marshall. So in the movie Forgetting Sarah Marshall, we're following our main character who is trying to forget his ex-girlfriend and run into her with her new boyfriend on a vacation. And he kind of strikes up a friendship slash relationship with, I think she's the front desk lady. Is she the front desk lady or a bartender? But I remember that she works at the resort that they're staying at. Whereas in the Unhoneymooners, we are following two characters who have to like go on the honeymoon of our FMC's sister because they're the only two that went to the wedding that didn't get food poisoning. So I end up giving this book 5 stars. It's one of my absolute favorites. And it just has like that peak rom-com vibe. Like all of the shenanigans they're getting into and the tropical setting really helps it out. And I think that's a lot why it feels like Forgetting Sarah Marshall. And we do also run into an ex in the Unhoneymooners. And that was probably one of my favorite kind of like subplot lines. In my personal opinion, this one is definitely giving Forgetting Sarah Marshall vibes. And then the last book recommendation that I have is a book that kind of gives like similar vibes, but like a different story, if that makes sense. So like I feel like these could be set in like a similar world, but not really like focusing on like the characters and their kind of journey. So the recommendation I'm giving is Meet Me at the Lake for Dirty Dancing. So very similar to Dirty Dancing, we are following our FMC and her kind of relationship with this resort. I know that in Dirty Dancing, it's kind of more told as like a flashback scene, whereas in this one, we do have a dual timeline. So our FMC is like born and raised and grew up in this kind of destination town and really wants to like get out of it. But she ends up having to come back and kind of confronting someone from her past that she had met while like out and about and was hoping to kind of like round out their summer with and, you know, meet up a year later at this resort. And he ends up not coming back a year later. So she is taking over the resort in the present tense and she's kind of like trying to renovate, trying to fix it up, ends up finding out that he was consulted to kind of help her with these renovations and help her to rebrand this resort. And that's when she kind of has to uncover what happened, why he never came back when they were supposed to be meeting up. So that one I feel like, while it doesn't give exactly Dirty Dancing vibes, it does have like a similar like vibe. It's a vibes read for sure. So like I said, that was my last recommendation. So here is a little like book stack of all of the books. Here is the little book stack of all the books that I recommend if you like certain rom-coms. Hopefully you guys are able to check these out. And if you make it to the end, leave the, is it like the camera? Leave the camera emoji, like the film camera. I'll put it on the screen. Leave this camera emoji if you make it to the end of the video, and I will see you guys in the next one. Hi, hello, and welcome to my YouTube channel. There's a hair on my mouth. So, like I was saying, in today's video, I'll be recommending words. I feel like I would just rather 2000s rom-com vibe, and, you know, like equating them. Sorry about that. And have the same similar. Everyone's comparing it. I think this one goes more in detail of, hi Pippa, but Pippa just rubbed all over it. So my recommendation is, I'm going to lift that up better and not say, oh. We also run into a couple of other people that they know in their real life, and that's a whole different basket of worms. I had to put them out of order now that I'm like looking at them.